Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are taking a bit of a journey together. Now, it's not a physical one, but an allegorical trip down a path that I can almost guarantee is going to feel incredibly familiar to you. We're unpacking a concept called the road beyond scarcity. For generations, people have traveled this very specific, incredibly narrow road. We all know it, we've all walked it. But today, we're going to explore exactly what happens when a few brave travelers finally decide, you know what, I'm stepping off. Whether we're talking about how you manage your career, your own business, your personal finances, or honestly, just your daily mental energy, understanding this road is literally the first step to completely changing your trajectory. So let's dive right in by looking at a single, heavily repeated belief that has conditioned generations into a life of constant limitation. And it's this: there is not enough for everyone. The underlying assumption has always been that there's just not enough money, not enough opportunities, not enough time, or not enough success to go around. And this belief, well, it was repeated so often and ingrained so deeply into our culture that it just kind of became the invisible air we all breathe. People spend their entire days fiercely competing for scraps simply because very few of us ever stop to pause and question if the premise is actually true. In the real world, this looks like that colleague who absolutely hoards information, or the business owner who is just terrified of competitors, entirely driven by the assumption that someone else's win is automatically their personal loss. Section 1. The Road of Scarcity, a System of Limitation. To kick off this first chapter, let's look at the road itself. The craziest part, this road actually appears intentionally designed to trap its travelers right in survival mode. They end up trading themselves away just to survive, working harder and harder, carrying this incredibly heavy burden of limitation, just hoping that one day they'll finally reach a magical destination called enough. But enough never actually arrives. I call this the scarcity grind. It just bombards us with these rapid-fire limiting beliefs: not enough money, not enough time, not enough success, not enough opportunities. Travelers on this road are constantly focused on the deficit. Because they're entirely consumed by what they don't have, they are completely blinded to the massive potential and abundance that is actually sitting right in front of them. You see this all the time in corporate ladders and endless hustle culture, right? We're running on the treadmill so fast just to keep from falling off that we never actually look up to see where we're going. And that deep-seated mindset completely dictates our behavior. The travelers find themselves stuck in this deeply draining four-step cycle. First, the road encourages them to constantly compare themselves to everyone else. Second, that relentless comparison breeds this deep, visceral fear of losing what little they've already managed to scrape together. Third, basic human psychology takes over. Zero-sum thinking kicks in, forcing them to compete viciously for scraps instead of cooperating to build something bigger. And finally, they learn to heavily guard what they have instead of giving. They're always chasing but never reaching enough, right? Just sinking deeper into scarcity with every single step. When you operate from a baseline of fear, your peripheral vision literally narrows. You stop seeing partnerships, you stop seeing innovation, and honestly, all you see are threats. Section 2. The Awakening. Questioning the road. But eventually, a dramatic shift occurs. A few of these exhausted travelers quietly begin to wake up from the exhaustion. And it doesn't happen with some loud crash or a massive rebellion. It starts very, very quietly in the minds of just a few individuals who are simply tired of the endless grind. It starts when one traveler asks a very dangerous question. What if there is enough? Let's just pause for a second and use that question to reconsider the reality of the scarcity grind we just talked about. What if the fundamental premise of the entire road, that there isn't enough to go around, was just completely wrong? What if the scarcity wasn't a rigid fact of nature, but merely an artificial constraint we all implicitly agreed to? And from there, another traveler wonders this: what if abundance is something we create? Now, this represents a massive pivot in thinking. It brilliantly shifts us from passively hoping to earn scraps to actively generating our own value. They stopped thinking of abundance as this fixed pie, where someone else's slice automatically means less for you. Instead, they started wondering if it's a pie you can actually bake yourself through action, generosity, and innovation. Think about the modern open source software movement or independent creators who collaborate to build entirely new industries. They aren't splitting a finite resource at all. They're continuously generating brand new value out of thin air simply by combining their efforts and their talents. Section 3. Practicing abundance, a different way. Now, to minds that have been conditioned for so long to believe in limitation, this whole concept of abundance initially sounded completely foolish, maybe even a little naive. Yet, something really remarkable happened. The awakened travelers didn't just sit around philosophizing about it. They actually started practicing a new, totally different way of living. And this is the crucial juxtaposition. They actively replaced their old defensive habits of fear, guarding, and competing with a completely new paradigm, celebrating, giving, and cooperating. It's a total rewiring of how they interacted with the world and with each other. In a professional setting, this is that absolutely vital shift from seeing a coworker as a rival for a promotion to seeing them as a genuine collaborator. They stopped fighting for a slice of the pie and started baking a much bigger one together. In practice, let's see how this builds into concrete, daily behaviors. First, they started sharing knowledge freely rather than hoarding it as some kind of leverage. They encouraged one another, actively celebrating each other's victories instead of feeling secretly threatened by them. And most importantly, they gave value first, well before ever asking for a single thing in return. Think about how powerful this is in business networking, right? The person who walks into a room asking, "What can I extract from these people?" almost always leaves empty-handed. But the person who enters asking, "How can I actually help the people in this room?" that person builds a fiercely loyal network that pays dividends for decades. Now, you might be thinking that giving everything away left him with nothing, right? Actually, scratch that. The exact opposite was true. Instead of becoming poor, their lives actually became significantly richer. Opportunities just started appearing out of nowhere. Relationships deepened into true partnerships. Ideas multiplied. Resources flowed. This is the compounding effect of abundance. And why do resources flow when you give? Because generosity builds immense trust, and trust is the absolute foundation of all networks, whether economic or social. The more they practiced abundance, the more abundance seemed to simply appear, driven entirely by the genuine connections they were fostering. Section 4. The Golden Rule, an ancient law. By changing their actions, these travelers had actually tapped into a principle hidden deep beneath the surface of the world. They hadn't invented some trendy new life hack. They had discovered a principle older than any system of scarcity they'd been born into. It's the Golden Rule. Treat others as you would wish to be treated. Give what you hope to receive. Become what you wish to attract. I really want to emphasize that this bold definition isn't just a polite suggestion or a nice saying you cross-stitch on a pillow. It is a fundamental, operational law of human dynamics. You literally attract and multiply what you put out into the world. If you project distrust and competition, the market responds in kind. If you project value, collaboration, and trust, the market reciprocates. Section 5. The Challenge of Faith. Believing the unseen. Now, walking this new path isn't completely effortless. It comes with one very significant challenge. To stay on this path requires something that many weary travelers on that old road have long forgotten: faith. Specifically, 4 pillars of faith. Faith that abundance actually exists in the first place. Faith that giving creates growth rather than depletion. Faith that cooperation is fundamentally stronger than competition. And critically, faith in oneself. Maintaining this faith when literally everyone around you is still viciously fighting for scraps, it is incredibly hard. It requires you to act directly against the grain of your societal conditioning. But holding onto these pillars is the exact catalyst that transforms a person. Those who embraced these 4 pillars found their circumstances changing, their relationships evolving, and most importantly, they themselves transformed. And as they transformed, a quiet movement began to grow. They helped others do the exact same thing. A private gathering of travelers committed to learning and practicing these principles together, step by step, proof by proof. Because ultimately, abundance is a way of living, seeing, and creating a future where everyone can rise. They proved that this isn't merely an idealistic thought or some utopian dream. It is a highly practical, actionable way of life that dictates how you run your business, how you manage your career, and how you engage with your community every single day. Section 6. The Invitation, your next step. And now, as we reach the conclusion of our explainer today, I want to transition this narrative directly over to you. An invitation has appeared. The adventure begins with a single step. Consider this a direct call to action, specifically for you, if you were sitting there right now feeling exhausted by the narrow, draining road you've been walking. This is for those who are ready to actively question scarcity. This is for those who are willing to rediscover faith in themselves and create their own value rather than fighting over scraps. You don't have to overhaul your entire life, your career, or your business model today, but you do have to take that first intentional step. So I want to leave you with one final provocative question to ponder today. Will you accept the invitation? Think about the road you are currently on, the limiting beliefs you're holding on to, and what might happen if you choose to step off into a world of abundance. What could your career, your relationships, and your peace of mind look like if you fundamentally shifted your paradigm? It is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning and keep creating.